From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Hello and welcome to our series, kind of irregular series on presentations about NDIP related activities and digital preservation related activities. And today we're very pleased to have Courtney Mumma, who provides end user support, user documentation, quality assurance testing, and system requirements management for Artefactual's Archivematica project. She's a graduate of the University of British Columbia, Masters of Archival Science and Master of Library and Information Studies program in 2009, and has worked at the City of Vancouver Archives, where she helped to design and implement their digital archives system. She's also been involved as a researcher and co-investigator on the international research on permanent authentic records and electronic systems, better known as InterPARES 3, and has also been a researcher at the University of British Columbia School of Library Science Digital Records Forensics Project. Forensics very popular these days, and is a member of the professional experts panel on the BitCurator Project. She's been published in Archivaria and has delivered a number of presentations and workshops nationally and internationally on the practical applications of digital preservation strategies. So Courtney.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Bill. I appreciate it. And I'm very humbled to be here today. I appreciate you all coming out to hear me talk about Archivematica, the open source digital preservation system that I've been working on. Actually, I've been working on it for several years now. I've been working on it since 2008. I started as a student doing research at UBC, and I was working on the product for the City of Vancouver Archives because they were a partner with UBC. And then I got hired by the City of Vancouver Archives when they decided to develop it further to preserve the Olympic records from the Winter Games in 2010. And I just finished up my work with them in January and then transitioned to Artefactual. So basically I've been on the same project from different angles for several years now. So first today I'm going to talk a bit about Artefactual systems and who we are and what it is that we do and what our goals are. And then I'll tell you a little bit about the Archivematica system. Not too much, there's a lot to tell. I probably won't have a chance to demo it for you. And I think some of you might have been there for the demo that I did at the conference this week as well. I'm going to talk a lot about the community around open source and the open source development model and how that works for us. And in particular, I'm going to talk about a recent integration with a legacy system, a content management system called CONTENTdm. And I'm just going to use that as kind of a frame of reference to talk a bit about how we integrate with legacy systems and what our goal is in integrating with those legacy systems. So Artefactual is in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. I don't know why I feel the need to clear this up, but probably because I'm at the Library of Congress. I'm actually American. I'm from Texas, but I've been in Canada since I was in school there. And I've been living there now for almost 7 years. So basically our two major products are Archivematica and ICA-ADAM. Archivematica is the digital preservation system, and ICA-ADAM is our content management system. We have integrated them, so anytime people download the Archivematica package, for instance, they automatically get ICA-ADAM as well for access to products of the Archivematica system, but that doesn't have to be the management system, and I'll talk to you a little bit about the CONTENTdm system, which is a system that has replaced ICA-ADAM for the UBC Library, who has been working with us. So here's just an overview of what Artefactual Systems is. What we're not is a software vendor. So that is, we don't sell software, we don't sell software licensing. We are a technical service provider, and we specialize in open source software and technology strategies for archives and libraries. And what we sell is our time to develop, enhance, fix, install, and integrate other systems. We also host and provide training for free and open source software. Any software or documentation that Artefactual creates as part of any of our technical services are released under free and open source or Creative Commons licenses. We have a pretty good reputation for promoting the use of open source software in general in the archives and library community as a way to first reduce cost, also facilitate collaboration amongst archives and libraries, improve standards adoption, and raise professional capacity in general. The overall idea is we build stuff that's useful to archivists and to librarians, hopefully. We release it all to all interested parties and under an open source license. And then the goal is, over time, to innovate, to make it better, and then make it awesome, is what Peter Van Garderen, our president, likes to say. If it's awesome, people will like it. And if more people like it and use it, there'll be more demand for our services. And then we can build more stuff and make it better and make it awesome. That's what we want to do, and that's our goal overall. So far, that's included maintaining requirements and user documentation for people who have decided to use our open source software. We manage bug fixes, enhancements, and all new feature development. We answer technical support questions. We support community-wide upgrades to the latest software releases, and we facilitate knowledge transfer through discussion lists, social media, wikis, conference presentations, training workshops, screencasts, webcasts, and user group meetings. So basically, our community consists of the free and open source community support that we do, and then additionally that commercial support that people would pay for over time to not only maintain their system should they choose to implement it, but also to develop new requirements and new features. And then once those features are developed, they're shared out with the rest of the community. So now a little bit more about Archivematica. Archivematica, I like to think of it as a living, breathing project that will never die, because digital preservation projects never really are finished. Digital preservation changes over time. The technical needs and the requirements of archives change over time, and I don't really see that stopping anytime soon. So Archivematica will be alive as long as there are needs in the community for what we do. We consider ourselves a comprehensive digital preservation system. We are free and open source software. I'll talk a little bit more about that. We use a microservices design pattern to provide an integrated suite of free and open source tools. So we're not building a tool, we basically are wrapping together a bunch of tools to fulfill requirements that we've built over time. We allow users to monitor and control microservices via a web-based dashboard, which I'll show you some screenshots of. We implement format normalization upon ingest and preserve originals as well. And that's to support emulation and migration strategies in the future in case, of course, things change as they do. We also generate premise event entities as audit logs to maintain the authenticity of our ingested objects. And we allow users to process digital objects from ingest to access in compliance with the ISO OAIS functional model. So all of those requirements came from OAIS, and they became essentially microservices over time. That was done from the very beginning in 2008, and our first release that implemented the OAIS functional model completely was last summer. So it took quite a while to do it, but you can actually track our progress and watch how we went from those requirements to workflow diagrams to the actual functioning Archivematica system on our wiki. It's all documented there. And I'm just showing you this because I don't think that people who work with digital objects can ever get this out of their head, so I'm showing you this to give you nightmares. This is just a reminder, this is OAIS. The general idea, I'm not going to talk too much about OAIS today, but just the general idea is we're going to focus on our discussion today on the functions of ingest, archival storage, and access, and the information packages, the dissemination information packages, which I'll refer to as DIPs, the archival information packages, which I'll refer to as APEs. And apparently I'm the only one who says that. I think a lot of people say AIPs. But I'm cool with saying APEs, so I'm going to say APEs. And then submission information packages, SIPs, which I'll only talk a little bit about. So this is just sort of an overview of our technical framework. So this management is done via this web dashboard. It actually looks a little different now. This is point 8 that's on this scan. And then through that dashboard, the user is monitoring and controlling via a web server, and that web server is attached to their, what we call the master control program, the MCP server. And that server has the file share that contains all of the Archivematica watch directories. Python scripts enact all of the microservices that either pass or fail, and then free and open source tools actually run those microservices tasks. Sometimes it's one tool per task, sometimes it's multiple tools per task, sometimes it's multiple tasks with one tool. And there's a possibility to use multiple processing clients, so that's how we're approaching scalability, is we want to make sure that our server isn't the only thing doing processing. We want you to be able to add clients so that you can scale up and process many objects at a time, which I think I'm talking to the right crowd who understands a lot of digital objects. And then at the bottom here, you just see the kind of things that we can take in. We can take in fully formed SIPs that have already been created in some way. So I know that the Library of Congress is bagging a lot of their digital objects. And so if that SIP was formatted in the right way, then that could be ingested into Archivematica as is. We also just take loose digital files and media, stuff from drives, stuff from USB sticks, stuff from optical media, and legacy media, which we're just starting to deal with, looking at some of the forensic tools that are out there. As Bill mentioned, I work with the BitCurator Project, which is looking to build open source digital forensics tools that are usable for archivists. And this is largely to address not only the authenticity of current digital materials that come into archives, but also those older legacy materials, because digital forensics experts have the expertise to grab materials off of those older things. This is just a list, basically. There are probably more now from the time I made this slide of some of the free and open source tools that we implement and the microservices that go along with them. And you can also find this on all this information's on our wiki as well, so don't feel like you have to read all of this right now. And then this is just sort of a more detailed view of how Archivematica works. So basically, from the producer, we can take in that external media, we can take something over an internal network that's somehow attached to your Archivematica system over an online service, FTP or something. Or you could actually, at some workstation, put together your submission information package, and that goes into Archivematica, and then Archivematica has a REST API. After Archivematica runs all its microservices and does all the processing, it sends out your AIP, or APE, to archival storage, and your DIP, or DIP, to your access system, whatever that might be. We like to think of ourselves as largely agnostic when it comes to storage and access systems. The goal is to integrate with as many as possible so that it's usable to more kinds of archives and sizes of archives. And so if you have a legacy system, you can still implement these open source tools for processing. And then, of course, we recommend a geo-redundant backup for storage. And then at the same time, Archivematica in its dashboard is monitoring and syncing with format registries. We haven't implemented that yet. That will be implemented for 1.0, but that's the goal, and we don't think that it would be an ideal preservation system if it didn't do that. And that's so we can check into our preservation policies, for instance, and make sure that we're still using formats for preservation and for access that are reasonable. So this is our wiki that I keep mentioning, and this is why I didn't bring handouts today. Because everything I'm saying you can also find on our wiki and more, and there's a lot of documentation there. We try to be really detailed about everything we do and every decision we make. And so you can find all of that there at archivematica.org. And now, I'm going to talk about freedom a little bit and open source. So most fundamentally, open source software grants anyone the right to run, study, alter, and redistribute software, and full documentation is provided on how to build the Archivematica virtual appliance from our source code. The community is encouraged to update our issues list in our wiki pages, which I'll show you, and to join the discussion list and weekly development meetings that we have in an open online chat room every Wednesday, 10 o'clock, West Coast time. We make a lot of jokes also, so if you just want to be entertained, you're welcome to join us. So while Archivematica is the lead developer of the Archivematica platform, we strongly encourage other third-party contractors like ourselves, public institutions, and also individual users, whoever they may be out there, to contribute to development or provide complementary solution services. So that's just saying we would really like people to work for us for free because we think we're cool and awesome. But they don't have to. So, a lot of people mistakenly believe that open source, free and open source software is like free beer, like awesome, free beer. But more significantly, all of the software documentation and development infrastructure is available free of charge and released under an AGPL and Creative Commons license to give users the freedom to study, adapt, and redistribute these resources as best suits them. So even though there are no license fees, membership dues, account registration, or anything like that to download Archivematica, and you can check out the source code, and that's on the public Subversion repository. There's no light or premium version of the system. If you get the system, it's the same system. All the functionality is available under a free and open single license. Still, there's a lot of work to support any system. And so we like to think of it more as there's no free lunch. And we try to explain this to our users. It still costs money to deploy and manage technology, including any open source technology. So it's more like a free kitten. That's my cat, Memphis. He's a cat now. He's gotten very big, actually. So it's less like free beer, more like a free kitten. In that it may not cost anything initially because of all those reasons I just told you, but you have to feed it. You have to take care of it. You have to pet it and make it purr. But you get a trustworthy longtime friend in return. There is still significant total cost of ownership savings, however, offered by open source digital curation solutions like Archivematica, especially if they don't compromise on functionality. In contrast, proprietary software and upgrade licenses can be really costly for budget-strapped memory institutions, for things like legacy migrations, for instance. So this is the open source ecosystem. So the open source model provides a cost-effective way to manage system maintenance expenses by freely sharing technical knowledge and documentation, providing direct access to core developers for technical support and feedback, and eliminating the need for maintenance contracts to implement release upgrades. It also encourages users to pool their technology budgets and to attract external funding to develop core application features. This means the community pays only once to have features developed. So for instance, this CONTENTdm system that we just integrated with the UBC Library paid for it, but everybody gets to share in it. So anyone who has CONTENTdm as their access system can use that and can implement Archivematica now free to them, thanks to the UBC Library. This stands in contrast again to development model driven by commercial vendor, where institutions share their own expertise to painstakingly co-develop digital curation technology, but then can't share that technology with their colleagues or professional communities because of expensive and restrictive software licenses imposed by the vendor. And I think this is actually very important, specifically when it comes to collecting communities, libraries, and archives, because we are, I think, at heart, a collaborative group of people. And I think it serves us all, and it serves the communities we serve if we share our knowledge. So this is basically an overview of the Archivematica community. Right now, we know that we have between 30 and 40 pilot testers because we are still actually in alpha until late August when we offer our first beta release, 0.9. We know we have 30 to 40 pilot testers because all of them are very active on our user group, and they email us, they let us know how things are going, they tweet nice things about us. However, once we get to 1.0, which is in January of 2013, we're going to be able to get pingbacks, and we'll know exactly how many people we have at any given time, whether they talk to us or not. So that's why it's 30 to 40, and it's not just a straight up number. So a lot of them, like I said, are contributing documentation. Some people have translated. I know there's a Portuguese website for Archivematica out there that we had nothing at all to do with, and we love it when stuff like that happens. People are testing our media preservation plans and sometimes questioning and criticizing them, which is also great because that challenges us, and we encourage people to develop their own media preservation plans and submit them so that users can make a choice between those plans and the plans that Archivematica Project has chosen. Some third-party service providers have already reached out to us, even though we're not in beta, who want to work with us so that, for instance, they can provide service in Eastern Europe. Because there are only 10 of us at Artefactual right now in Vancouver, and so it would be very difficult for us to support Eastern Europe. So we also offer education. This builds our community. And actually, Archivematica is also used to teach OAIS in a lot of places right now. More and more, I have university professors coming to me and asking how they can download the tool and use it for their class to teach OAIS. And we've done some workshops lately, and we'll do more of that next year. So far, we've done 10 in the last year, and it's going to be even more over the next 12 months. This is the discussion list that I was talking about. It's very small, but it's very active, and this is where we ask people to go after the wiki if they haven't found an answer on our wiki, because oftentimes people will have asked the question that they're going to ask, and they can find an answer here. And I'm the one who responds immediately to these. If I can't find an answer, I go to one of my technical services staff, and usually within 24 hours. And then these are our client partners. So these are the ones who are actually paying for the development. So far, we've partnered with Simon Fraser University Archives and Records Management, the United Nations, the City of Vancouver Archives, who implemented Archivematica in January as their comprehensive digital preservation system, the Rockefeller Archive Center, and the University of British Columbia, which is what I'll talk to you about today. We do something called Agile Development, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. So our 0.1 alpha release was in February of 2009, and then we've got 0.9 coming out, which is our first beta release, in August, and then January 13 is the big 1.0 that we're very excited about. And every iteration then, of course, leads to updated and improved requirements, software, documentation, and development resources. And it's all building on each of these iterations. So all of the information for each iteration doesn't go away, it's still all there, and it's still all useful. And then this is that issues list that I was showing you, and this is where we basically manage, this is where I report bugs, this is where users can report bugs, this is where people can actually submit new requirements that they would like to see. Sometimes that's not possible unless they're sponsored by one of our client partners, but sometimes it might just be a really great idea that we could do very easily, and we would love it to show up here so that we could implement it for one of our next iterations. So either that list or this development roadmap, which we have on our wiki, is a good place to go to see where we're going. So that means you can not only see where we're going when it comes to requirements that we've developed ourselves or been recommended by organizations, but also all of our supported developments. And we're pretty upfront about who's supporting those developments. So this shows you what we're doing with the University of British Columbia libraries right now. So you see at the core, there's the Archivematica project. We're working with UBC librarians and archivists. We're working with librarians in their digital initiatives department in their library. with their special collections department and with their university archives. So both their archives and their special collections actually have digital archives materials. The libraries are dealing a lot more with digitized materials. So what they have right now, they have a DSpace instance, they have CONTENTdm for access, and they're implementing our product, ICA-Atom, for access in their special collections and possibly in their university archives as well. So the goal of Archivematica at UBC then is to take exports from DSpace as SIPs and export those into Archivematica. That has actually been completed for 0.9 as of about a week ago. So that part's done, and that's just one integration we did for them. Upload dissemination information packages to their access system CONTENTdm from Archivematica, which we're also just now finishing. And then also upload DIPs to ICA-Atom. So we have to be very flexible, basically, for everything that we're doing with the UBC Library. They have processing workstations, so it works a lot in those first diagrams that I showed you. They've got workstations where they're bringing in their digitized objects, and they're also sending things over the network. And then they've also got a LOX server that we're currently not uploading archival information packages to, but we would like to do that, and that might be a next step in working with the UBC Library, would be some kind of integration with a LOX system. So I'm going to talk now about the CONTENTdm integration. So basically, as I mentioned, the Archivematica Project and the University of British Columbia Library integrated their CONTENTdm system with Archivematica to add digital preservation services to their digitization workflows, because they were digitizing and then they would end up with these digital objects and they didn't have any way to preserve them. And that's why they initially came to us, and then of course it grew and grew and grew. Okay. Sorry, there are a lot of lights. Okay, so basically, we've added the ability in Archivematica for the user to supply a METS struct map or a comma-separated values file in any batch upload to the Archivematica system so that they can maintain any sort order to those digitized objects and physical structure that they may have in the CONTENTdm collections, because they might already have collections set up that are hierarchical collections, for instance, in CONTENTdm, and we want to make sure that we can retain that. So we've added that struct map in the SIP, and it allows for ingest of compound objects from CONTENTdm. This will also expand to being able to, in general, ingest compound objects into Archivematica from anything. So not only were we getting an integration with CONTENTdm, but we were also getting the ability to ingest these compound objects and keep the order, which is something that we hadn't developed yet. And we're still adding the ability for that CSV file, but the struct map is complete. So this is just a picture of how it works. This is the Archivematica dashboard. You'll notice that it's on a weird-looking operating system for some of you, maybe not all of you. This is the Ubuntu operating system, and that's what Archivematica runs on. So this is just Google Chrome, but it could be any web browser. And what we've done is we've started an ingest. What we call it is a transfer before it's become what we consider a properly formed submission information package, or SIP. So right now we're in a tab called transfer, and we've uploaded from whatever we've got connected to the server, which you can set up within the Archivematica dashboard. And so you've taken in something as a CONTENTdm upload, and it's awaiting a decision right here to create a SIP because it's already run through all of these microservices that I was talking about earlier. UUIDs and checksums have been assigned to the transfer and to all the files within the transfer. We've done virus checking at this stage. We've done unpackaging, so if anything is zipped up, we've opened up that package so that we can assign then UUIDs to everything in that package. And so this is all to maintain the authenticity of the materials that we're bringing in. There's also an opportunity here to quarantine. So we don't have it as a regular part of our workflow if you just take the default Archivematica, but you can set it up to stop and allow you to quarantine, and this would allow your malware definitions to update. A lot of people like to do it for 30 days. For a while when we had it just running, we had it just going for 2 seconds just so we could show it, but it just got annoying. So basically you can set it up to quarantine if you want to. We have it just skipping over that right now. So then we can upload for access. The new CONTENTdm microservices create a dissemination information package that can be uploaded directly to CONTENTdm or routed through its OCR project client first. So we've reconfigured basically what the Archivematica dip looked like, specifically for CONTENTdm. We automatically produce our regular standard dip, but then if the user at the very end selects CONTENTdm upload, which I'll show you, the dip is converted to the CONTENTdm format. And we actually brought someone in from SFU who was just really good at coding to do this. So that's another way we partnered with someone outside of Archivematica, and we paid him to do this, but he just knew what he was doing, and it was great to have someone who was enthusiastic about the project do it. We've also added a workflow step in Archivematica ingest to select where you're going to send your CONTENTdm upload. And then we've also changed the way that you can administer Archivematica in our administration tab, which I'll show you. We've added configuration settings to send a dip to CONTENTdm, so you can configure exactly where it's going in CONTENTdm. So this is that administration page. It's a tab of Archivematica. And as you can see on the left there, it says Atom dip upload, which is our product, ICA Atom, CONTENTdm dip upload, transfer source directories, which is how you assign where you're bringing in stuff from, and then configuration processing and user setup. So this is the CONTENTdm upload, and you just describe it, you tell it where it is, and you can have multiple CONTENTdm instances connected to Archivematica. So this is once we have selected create SIP from that transfer tab, it goes into our ingest services and it runs through all of our ingest services, and that basically is changing that transfer into what we consider a SIP that's ready to ingest as an APE and a DIP. The reason these processes are separate is because you can actually use your file browser between ingest and transfer. And you can take multiple transfers and make them into one SIP. You can change your transfer around but maintain the original order in its METS file and make it one or more SIPs. You can do a lot of stuff, basically. And we wanted to allow for that because we know that archivists do processing. So at this step, it's asking you whether you want to normalize. Again, that's our preservation strategy, is normalization. You can normalize for preservation and access. You can also just normalize for access or just normalize for preservation, so only make a DIP or only make a SIP, or an APE, sorry. And then we also have the ability to normalize service files, which is something we did for another client. So once you choose to normalize, it runs through all the normalization services. All of these open source tools are normalizing for preservation and for access. And then at this stage, you can actually, it's the approved normalization stage, you can actually review your dips that you've made. And what that does is it opens up another browser window, and in that browser window you can look at individual files, you can download things if you need to look at them in your home computers if you don't have something plugged into your browser that can view, for instance, a PDF for some reason. And you can also look at a report here that tells you whether it was already in a preservation format, whether it was already in a normalization, in an access format, and whether that normalization was successful in all cases. And then, after you approve it, this is when you finally get to upload your DIP and store your APE in archival storage. So upload DIP, as you can see, there's a drop-down right here. You can either reject everything right now and just realize you made a mistake somewhere or for some reason don't want to do this. And we try to allow for that rejection anywhere. You can upload the DIP to ICA Atom, or you can upload your DIP to CONTENTdm now. And then we also added the ability to download your dip as a zipped package that you can actually pull off of, for instance, if you have a bare metal install that's not attached to your network, you can actually pull off that zip package and transfer it to CONTENTdm somewhere else. And we added also a dynamic call from Archivematica to CONTENTdm so that you can generate a selection list to choose from your actual destination collection in CONTENTdm, which is also something we do with ICA Atom uploads. You can actually select your target selection, target collection, or you can create an intermediate level where you can send that dip automatically so it populates in your access management system. And so this is just showing you that select target CONTENTdm server drop-down menu. We don't have a lot configured in our demo right now. Also, it's very difficult. We can only test at UBC because Artefactual doesn't own an instance of CONTENTdm. So all the testing we do on this, we have to take our dev out to University of British Columbia and actually install on their machines and test on their machines. Proprietary software. So public access to the reference copies continues to be via that CONTENTdm interface, which is what the University of British Columbia, University of British Columbia Library has been comfortable with and used to, and they had no intention of changing their system over. And then Archivematica, as I showed in the earlier diagrams, monitors repository-wide preservation policies and maintains preservation masters in high-quality APEs, compliant with METS, premise, and the Library of Congress Bagot spec. And we consider ourselves, again, storage agnostic, so at this point they're not storing it in locks, but if that's their goal, fine, then we would do an integration. So I just want to talk a little bit about what the Archivematica ape is. I think I don't really need to tell you guys too much about the Library of Congress Bagot spec, but the ape is packaged, is bagged. And this is what the Archivematica archival information package looks like. So it's a directory, it's your data directory, and then all your bag stuff. And then in that data directory, you've got logs, metadata, objects, and your METS file. And then, of course, your premise is in that METS file. So this is going a little bit deeper into in that data directory in logs. This is where you can see the log from your virus scanning. And this would be from the virus scan of the SIP. The extraction log, which means if there were any of those zipped objects, anything compressed in any way, it would have been expanded. And then your normalization log, which shows basically the same thing as that report that I showed you. This would be here as a normalization log, so that doesn't go away. And then in the metadata folder, this is where you would actually see all of your transfers. So remember I mentioned you could make several transfers into a submission information package. If you had several, they would be here in this transfers folder. And then if you open that transfers folder up, you would see every transfer that became this SIP. And then within that, within each of those, you would see another objects, metadata, and logs folder. And that would have all of the METS information of the original order from those transfers. So even if you had deleted things or changed things, you would always be able to go back to that original order, which as archivists is very important. And then in objects, that's actually where your stuff is. These are your digital objects. In this case, it's just a bunch of pictures. And this is also where your submission documentation is, because we allow the opportunity for people to upload things like donor agreements, anything else that you might have that's documentation about those digital objects that you've accessioned. So what's next? Basically, we're adding the OAI harvest functionality to update Archivematica, to update our ape if the user enhances any of the descriptive metadata of the uploaded object in CONTENTdm. So this is a really big deal. This makes it easy for UBC Library and anyone else who's got CONTENTdm. Should they make some changes in their description system, all that metadata would go back into the ape and be stored with that ape over time. And then we are also working on integration with other content management systems and storage systems. Right now, we're working towards, hopefully, an Islandora integration, which would allow us to integrate with Fedora. That's just one. There are other possibilities out there. There are also storage integrations. I think it would be great if we could integrate with iRods. And that's all I have for you today, but I'd love to answer questions if you have any, and I hope it's been informative. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
You mentioned that the beta is going to connect up with format registry.
Yes.
How is that going to work?
I have no idea. And I'm actually being honest, but I can tell you, and I'll email you and explain it to you, but I am not a technologist by any means. I'm an archivist who talks to technologists. So I will ask them how that will work. Okay. But that's the idea. It would probably, I would think, be that the same kind of OAI calling, right? Like, of course it's recorded, so if my boss sees this and I'm wrong, oh well. But I'll let you know for sure. Okay. But that's basically the idea is we just want to call out to those systems. There's a possibility that, you know, we mentioned in our slide, pronom, UDFR, we might want to combine those into a registry that's specific to Archivematica. We've actually had someone working on that called Formatica. And it's in its very, I know, so creative. It's in its very, very early stages. But I think that would be great if we didn't have to call out to multiple places, if it was just all in one place. Right. So that's the idea behind that, and that is probably where we're going. And so look for that probably January.
Okay. Great.
Hi.
Hi. What kind of scalability have you tested with it?
Well, when I was at the City of Vancouver, I was doing a lot of the scalability testing because I was working with the digital records from the games. And from the games, there were 25 terabytes. Yeah. So, and those came on everything. The biggest SIP that I ingested was 32 gigs. And I assigned that a file name. So that's a 32 gig file. And that's sort of how I was breaking them down. I was trying to logically break them down into archival hierarchical levels. And that 32 gig file took 7 days. But this is not particular to Archivematica. Anyone who's running even one tool, sometimes FITS itself, which is the file information tool set from Harvard that runs a bunch of validation tools and identification tools for formats. That can take forever. Just a couple of days ago, I think, someone mentioned it taking several days, so it's not particular to Archivematica. Additionally, we've just started kind of a more scientific method because we want to be able to show this scalability testing to people. So on our wiki, we've got, if you go to our wiki and you type in scalability, you'll be able to see all the testing results. And basically, we've set up all these parameters for testing, and we've found that so far having 6 dedicated processing stations kind of optimizes processing for the things that we've been doing so far. And I wish I could tell you exactly. We've been testing per like number of objects and size of objects, and all that information is there. I haven't looked at it honestly in a couple of weeks, so I'm not sure what the biggest or the most has been so far, but it is all available there. And it is, we know, we have been working with, we initially thought we'd be working with smaller and medium-sized institutions, but we've been working with larger and larger institutions and have found that even medium-sized institutions like the City of Vancouver Archives are actually having to ingest these giant packages because people just produce so much digital data that we have to scale up, and we realize that. So that testing is ongoing and active.
So the system doesn't, you decide what to put in the system doesn't provide a selection capability or something?
For amount of stuff? Yeah. No, you decide exactly. We're trying to empower, I mean, I could say that generally about Archivematica. That's why there's so many stopping points. Those stopping points aren't allowing you to like change anything or mess with the integrity. They're just allowing archivists to do their jobs, or librarians who are working with digital collections. Because we stop and we process things, and we found that what archivists do through our clients and through our users is iterative. So all processing is iterative. Appraisal is iterative. You're still doing appraisal sometimes when you're doing description. Maybe we shouldn't be, but you know, that's a whole nother conversation.
Is it the case that I would just ask, let's say about CONTENTdm, that the dissemination package
Absolutely. Yep.
So then I wonder, you explained, of course, at the beginning that Archivematica will last forever, and you don't need to worry about it. But suppose that didn't happen, and you wanted to take your apes and put them in the next system.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds to me like what you have are what I call a virtual package. It's basically a directory system that has subdirectories in it, that has the mets over here and the objects over there and the metadata over there. Has there been discussion about what would happen in case you didn't last forever and you had to hand the apes to the next person, whether some kind of actual encapsulation would be worth thinking about?
Well, they're bagged. That's the most basic answer to that, and we don't care where people store their stuff. So that's why
Bags are generally virtual packages as well, are they not?
what we're trying to do is be as standards compliant as possible. And right now, it seems like bagging the archival information package is kind of what's becoming the best thing in the community, best practice of the community. So they're bagged and they all have the same folder structure, so you always know where that mets is, you always know where your objects are, you always know where the metadata is. So we hope, and the goal is, for it to be as easy as possible should Archivematica never exist in the future, for people to take their apes and move them wherever they want, and to use whatever system they want. It would just be the same thing, that they would have to do that integration that we just did with CONTENTdm, right? It's any legacy system, you've got to do a little tweaking in order to ingest things from other systems, migrate from other systems. Archivematica itself, though, really isn't doing much other than the management function. It does show you kind of, you can look up an ape and you can find its connection to the dip so that you can see where they both are and that sort of thing. So if someone were to request the ape rather than that low resolution photograph in your dip, they could do that easily via the Archivematica interface. But all that information is also in your description system. So you don't necessarily need Archivematica for that. So the idea is we're just trying to make it as transparent as possible, everything that we do, so that it is as easy as possible for people in the future to take those apes, to take those dips, and do whatever they want with them. It's why we document a lot, and it's why we're trying to do everything open source, because that's really the best way to be transparent. I hope that answered your question. Okay. Oh, wow.
I was curious to go into a little more detail into the content validation capabilities. Carrie, how deep does that go? Is this just checking a file header or extension, or is it actually doing something like decoding a JPEG or a PDF?
We use a tool for that. So all of our validation is done via FITS. So I would actually recommend looking into the FITS tool more for that.
It's just 100% fits.
It is 100% FITS, yeah. Other than that, we do, we have a microservice that sanitizes file names. That's really all we do to files. We add a UUID, and we add a checksum. But other than that, everything is done by FITS right now. But the thing is, because we're organized as microservices, it doesn't have to be FITS. And I would argue that it might not be soon. There's Fido out there right now that people are saying is a lot faster. I know the Skate project did something with Tika search. Are you familiar with that?
We use it for content extraction.
That's exactly, so somebody broke it down, made it for extraction. Yeah, so we might use some combination of those tools in the future. And the idea is that the tools and the tools matter, obviously, because we have to test them and make sure they're good tools, and that they give us all of the significant properties that we identified in the original, in whatever rendering format we decide upon. But we can switch them out, and we're always going to be looking for better tools, and that's a lot of what I do, is testing tools and seeing what works better. So right now it's FITS, and I'm sorry, that's not a great answer for you, but that's the best I can give. I think I saw it. Hi.
For the tools that you choose to do the microprocesses, do you offer them any assistance in maintaining their code and
Well,
them out?
that's a really good question. We are really close with other communities, so if we're using a tool, we're testing it a lot, and they want our feedback in the same way that we want feedback from people who are using Archivematica. So we're very active on lists for other communities. I recently bugged people about Bagged, in fact, because I needed a way to have empty directories in there. And then I found out that, oh, it's already been updated to allow for empty directories, and this was for an email problem. And then there's a project called Muse, also for email, which we're looking at for email access. That's not perfect yet. The intention of Muse, also out of Harvard, wasn't to provide access to email archives, but it's kind of handy for a lot of things, tagging of email, for instance, and kind of secluding certain kinds. So we've been in contact with them, and now they're really enthusiastic about possibly finding another use for their system. So yes, we're very involved. Sometimes we're involved in what I do. So since I'm reporting on requirements and bugs and things like that, I can go ahead and update their bug lists and issues lists. But sometimes it's our technologists who need to have long email exchanges to figure something out. And that's another really cool thing about open source, is it tends to be pretty collegial, and we can all just talk to each other and figure stuff out, and everybody wants to help, and everybody gets excited about building up this whole community. Is that what you were looking for? Thanks.
Other than the single purpose of UBC and the CONTENTdm installation, which have you been in contact with other CONTENTdm people or OCLC on providing this as backend?
We have been in contact with OCLC while we were doing the work, just to make sure we weren't breaking any rules, because it's a proprietary system. But since it's not in 0.8, it's actually in 0.9, which is coming out next month. Exactly. There hasn't been a lot of community feedback, but I imagine there will be some CONTENTdm users who are pretty excited about this.
I know they're looking for something like this.
Yeah.
I've been in conversations with people who are anxious. Maybe developing their own thing, which would be kind of pointless.
Which is why I do stuff like this. I want to get out there. I want people to know that it's available, and know that our intention is not to rule the world. Our intention is to integrate with as many systems as possible and make it as easy as possible to have kind of this nice ape and dip that you can take away and do whatever you want with. Hi.
Oh, and I was just going to ask if you could just pull things over PMH or something like that too for other tools. So Omeka can ingest. They use that to pull stuff out
Yeah.
of CONTENTdm.
That's the goal. That's the goal. Yeah, it's Peter's goal. Yeah. The big boss. Yeah.
I have a question. When you talk about normalization,
Yes.
it kind of goes back to what Carl was talking about. Would you have the option, say you're ingesting SIPs that are TIFFs, would the normalization process include perhaps just generating a derivative JPEG?
You could, yes.
So that would be considered normalization.
Because you can normalize either for access,
Okay.
or for preservation, or for both.
Okay.
And we keep the original
Right.
in the ape. So yes, absolutely. And I should also say, just while we're talking about normalization, that all of our preservation plans and the testing that went into the tools that we use for them, and all of our decisions about what the significant characteristics that we can render in both our archival storage and our dissemination information package, that's all on the wiki in detail. There was a lot of testing. That was like a year of testing deciding on those preservation plans. And we'll be building those over time. And it's a personal goal of mine for every system that tries digital preservation, who's doing normalization, to share these out. I would really like to see just some sort of repository, this is my dream, of all of these preservation plans and the tools people are using, because I think that would be really useful for the community.
You probably talked about what those preservation plans were in your presentation.
Not too much, actually, because it's a whole giant topic.
Briefly kind of run down what those are.
Sure. Do I have internet? Probably. Can I show you?
If you can, that would be great.
Sure.
Depends on the day.
I was okay earlier. Wow. Sound effects too, hey? So if you go to, it's right on the top page, if you go to the top page of our Archivematica Wiki and you click on media type preservation plans, you can actually scroll down here and you can click on any media type, any file format, and go straight to the page that talks about what we've decided to do for that format. So this is our audio page, and we show you what our preservation and access format is, what the normalization tool is, kind of why we did it, the research that went into it. And then when you go into the individual formats, you can actually see the test results. And all of these test results, what we're looking for is that rendering is compliant with what we've identified as significant characteristics of those audio files. So then you would go to see, well, what are they testing on? And you would go to the significant characteristics of audio files. And you would look at what we've decided based on research, what those are. It's all here.
That looks great.
Thank you. Yeah, the Dates is doing it too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's right.
they've got their action plans all online, and I think that's great.
You know of anybody else who's doing it?
No. I really, really want more people to do it.
So your media type list has maybe, what, a dozen items on it, something like that?
Exactly.
What's the next one up your sleeve when you move on to add to that?
So the way that we build this list, and the way that this list was built, was our first test case scenario, which was the work I was doing at the City of Vancouver Archives. So basically, I looked at that 25 terabytes of stuff and grabbed every single format type that I could, and that's how we built this list. So I'd say that's pretty good that we have such a short list from 25 terabytes, but I am absolutely aware that there are thousands of other formats out there. And so I think what's going to happen over time is that our client partners will do more testing, we'll have more formats that come out of that, and then we'll be able to develop these same kind of plans for those formats. So it'll build over time, absolutely. That's why I say we're living and we're breathing, because it's never over. Our journey is never over.
As far as Archivematica is concerned, is the preservation planning specifically format media type driven, or is it also program or purpose driven?
Right now, it's format type driven with the default Archivematica. However, we do allow for individual institutions to use their own preservation plans. It's just some scripting, basically. So that's something we would work with our partners to figure out, and then whatever they did, we would share it out.
So the one row there on the raw files, raw camera files,
Yes.
and I see a reference to digital negative, but it looks like the normalized column is the original format. Are you sneaking up on DNG, or do you have a sense of that as a normalization target?
I'm gonna say that that's really hard. Right now, we are preserving the original, and this was a result of the stuff that I was doing again at the City of Vancouver. I had so many raw images, but I also had, in that same system that I got from the organizing committee of the games, I also had JPEGs and TIFFs that they made from those DNGs and other raw formats, but they didn't have any link between them. And so I just had to ingest them all, and I had to do it rather quickly. And so there hasn't been as much work around this as I would like. But your question is not something we haven't thought of.
Yeah, I'm sure. It gets batted around here. Our acquisitions of pictures are still in the digital form, or relatively small in terms of things that were shot in digital cameras, but they're sneaking up on us. At the moment, the predominant thinking here is sort of in favor of DNG as a normalization target, but we're all just curious as to what other people are thinking, since those proprietary ones seem less ideal for archiving.
Exactly. And so that's why right now we're just preserving that original and then making an access copy that's smaller for the access system.
Thank you.
We are at the end of our appointed time. Thank you very much, Courtney.
Thank you.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.